Hello everybody, this is Jim Feist in Las Vegas, and I'm joined again by Hank Goldberg in Florida. Good morning, Hank. How are you today?
I'm good, Jim. How you doing?
Not too bad. Last night the NBA showed us three favorites and three, not competitive games.
Yeah, I'm in pretty good position with the Pelicans. I took them with a pretty good price for the series, so they'd really have to collapse to lose that series. And they're just dominating right now. The backcourt for the other side is just not playing very well at all. And I'll tell you, the Pelicans picked up two guys who have really helped them a lot. And they're in good shape. I like them.
They're a dark horse in the West. There's no question about that. That's a 4-game series. That's not going back to Portland. Joel Embiid played last night. Unbelievable. 7'2" player. He hasn't played in a long time, and he played extremely well. And that was very impressive in the fourth quarter, how they shut Miami down.
I like the way that coach played, so cagey, holding out until the last minute as to whether he was going to play or not. Took the game off the board, and then he came back. But Philadelphia's a 3-point favorite when it was clear that he was going to play. He was going to play all along in Game 3, and screwing around. And with him in there, the Heat's no match. I'll tell you what's really a disappointment, and that is the Heat's big man has done nothing.
Whiteside's he's been terrible.
And they asked the coach after the game what he's going to do about Whiteside. And he said he's going to have to work with him in the next couple of days. He didn't take a shot in the game. He's been useless. And they paid him all that money. They're not looking so good on that one.
Well, no, and there's been a lot of players in all sports that get paid a lot of money and they just fall off the cliff because they work to get the money and then their pride goes out the window with the money. So I'm not surprised.
Miami has two of the most overpaid athletes in all of sports. They have Whiteside and they have Tannehill.
Well, that's interesting. We're switching sports, but I can't disagree. We got some good games going on tonight. We can touch on the Cleveland goes to Indiana. The game is Indiana 1, and Cleveland is all about LeBron. I mean, other than him, I don't see very much to be impressed about with that team. Other than LeBron, who's amazing, it's just a very average team.
They're less than average right now with Love hurt. Love's got the broken thumb. That's going to compromise him. And, Love is the only star player they have out of LeBron. And I think they got a real problem. And going to Indiana, I think they may not get out of the first round. Indiana's pretty good. They're home. They're a little inconsistent. We'll see what happens tonight. But, even with LeBron in the last game, they almost blew it. They were down to 3 points. The game came down to 3 points at the end. Cleveland did their very best to lose that game, which is something that they've been doing all year. So their play in this first round has been consistent with their inconsistency all season long. And they're just not a very good team right now. And defensively, they're not very good at all.
Absolutely true.
By the way, I told you about Miami's defense when that series started, and they've given up 130 points in one game and 120 some odd points in another. They are bad defensively.
That is very true, but I have to give some of the credit to Philadelphia. They have a potent offensive team there. That they have a lot of weapons. They're very impressive And right now, honestly, I'm thinking Philadelphia's the team that's going to come out of the East.
I've thought that all along. But Miami's defense was bad during the regular season. You know, they were giving up games. Teams were scoring in the hundreds on them consistently. They're just not that focused all the time, and they're not that skilled all the time.
You know,
I think you know, it's hard to come up with a guy who's their outstanding defensive player. Might be Dwayne Wade, and you know something, Wade can't do it every night in, night out. I think I said that on our Wednesday podcast.
no, he can't do it every night. He's had a career that's been amazing. He's 36 years old. He's had a lot of injuries, and he can't deliver every night. There's no way he can do that. The one thing about NBA right now, it's an obvious statement, but I'll make it anyway. NBA is turned into a three-point shooting contest, and when you have good nights, you win. When you have the bad nights, you lose. It's a very fickle statistic where you're shooting shots from great distances. You have a 7-foot guy or a 7'2" guy that's shooting threes from outside when he could be dominating under the boards. The game has totally changed. It's going to swing back. You'll watch. It's going to swing back, and people are going to learn that middle is wide open.
Well, yeah. Let me ask you something. Why would you say it's going to swing back when you see guys like the Celtics who have a 6'10" guy out of Duke who can shoot from all over the place? You got a guy like Embiid who can shoot from all over the place, and he's not the only guy on that team who's big who can shoot from outside. You know, these kids are coming out of college and they're shooting from half court and making baskets. They're growing up to shoot long, the long ball.
Well, Hank, I'm not going to, get into a debate with you about this, but everything swings back. What's happening in the NFL? It's hard to find good quarterbacks, so the running game is going to make a little bit of a comeback. You're going to have offensive linemen that can block for the run as well as pass block. You're going to see that in the NBA as well, because what's going to happen is teams are going to get so used to defending the three, they're going to forget how to defend the middle. The middle is wide open. You get a good offensive player in the middle, a guy 7 foot, 6'11", 7 foot, 7'2", that can dominate inside. It's going to make it that much harder to get the threes from the outside, because now you have to defend the middle too. Because coaches are going to find that the weakness is going to be the things that people cannot do anymore, and they're going to take advantage of it. It always swings back and forth. The pendulum has gone too far over to the 3 points, and it's going to swing back. Everything in life goes that way, in my opinion.
I think that this is a trend that's not reversible. It's the game has changed. It's just you've got guys who can play, who can handle the ball, who can bring the ball up court, who are 6'10". And then, it used to be a rarity. Now it's they're all over the place. And the days of guys who are Curry size are very rare.
Well, yes, that's very true. But you're going to see adjustments, because if all 32 teams play the same way and they're just all bombing away from three, every night's going to be the same thing. If you can hit your threes and hit free throws and rebound, that's a team that's going to win. So you're going to have to make adjustments, because not every team is going to have great outside shooting players. There just aren't that many to go around. But so they're going to make adjustments, and the coach is going to say, hey, I can't beat these guys by doing what they do. I have to beat them by doing what they can't defend. And that's where the adjustments will come.
Maybe too many of them. I mean, they're just everywhere you look. These guys are freaks. You look at the guy with Milwaukee, they're all over the place. By the way, last night, the guy for Utah Mitchell, who was supposed to be questionable, showed up and scored, how many points? And he was fine, and they won easily. They were never challenged. There's another team winning with every team that's winning right now has got that going for them.
Well, there's no question. That's today's NBA, but it is what it is. We got some we have teams last night. All three favorites won, and tonight we've got the favorites are Indiana, small, 1-point favorite. You got Washington 1.5, and you got Milwaukee was 6.5. It's down to 5. I mean, coaching wise, there's a tremendous difference between the Boston coach and the Milwaukee coach. It's a huge difference, and that has made a huge difference in the first two games. It's obvious the tactician for Boston is their head coach, and that's made a big difference.
There's a huge difference between the lineup that Milwaukee throws on the court and the lineup that Boston throws on the court. Boston can smother them with big men, and they can dominate the boards, and Milwaukee just can't keep up with them. And that coach is trying everything he can to stop that with different rotations. He's been playing 11 men per game, and he's got the one guy who's a fantastic player, and he's outnumbered by all these guys. Rozier is another one who can shoot bombs for him, and you got the Dookie who can shoot bombs for him, and it's just they've got three great shooters who can just outnumber them with the outside shots. And Milwaukee's got the one guy who can take it to the hole, and it's not enough.
That's true. Washington, Hank, what do you think about Washington's chemistry? Is there dissension on that team? They simply do not look like a team that's got it together.
I thought that would be a competitive series, and it's just not so far. It wouldn't surprise me if Washington comes up with a game tonight. I think they got a challenge at some point. And Toronto is the one team that is not carried by bigs. Their backcourt is sensational, and they are finally living up to what's expected of them in the postseason, at least in this series.
That's true, and they are a very deep team. During the season, they were playing 10, 11 players, and they're doing that even in the postseason, and that really helps with the fatigue issue, and it keeps the fresh players on. They're rotating a lot of people, and that puts a lot of pressure on a team like Washington that doesn't go that deep, and I see that wearing. Actually, I think this game will end up tonight being Toronto favored in the game by the time it tips off. They're simply a better team right now than Washington is. Washington's, had a pretty good run earlier in the year, but their chemistry seems to be off. And it's kind of strange because when Wall was out, they actually played pretty darn good. And right now, it just doesn't seem like they're meshing extremely well.
No, their key people aren't performing. That's part of the problem.
Right. Houston had a flat game in game 1, and then they came out and did a job in game 2. That line opened 3.5. This is a Saturday game, and now it's Houston is 5. It's on the road at Minnesota. You see any chance for Minnesota stealing a game in that series?
I don't know. What's wrong with Harden, by the way? He had, 1 for 14 the other night, and they won without him, basically. He didn't contribute very much at all. And he's had his usual postseason swoon in the first couple of games.
Well, he actually...
And they're lucky that Paul is there to carry him.
Well, in the first game, he did score 44 points, and the other 4 shooters for Houston were 2 of 24. So it's been a tale of 2 games, 2 stories in 2 games, where Harden carried them in game 1, and then the rest of the guys carried them in game 2. And that's not but like I said, when you're a 3-point shooter, you're going to have fickle nights. You're going to have these games where you hit, 5 out of 10, and the other games you're going to hit 2 out of 10. So it's a fickle statistic because you're long range. It's just, it's like putting. If you're hitting 2-foot putts, you're going to make a lot more than if there were 22-foot putts. So it's a fickle statistic, and you're going to have games up and down like that. But is Minnesota good enough to beat this team?
Well, they're well coached. They got a good defensive coach, but Harden in the first game, did not do much in the first half. He scored most of his points in the second half of that game, and a lot of them at the end of the game. But he got a lot of his points at the free throw line. But he was a little off at his shooting in game 1 too. So I don't know. I think I think that Minnesota right now is overmanned. That Houston's really good, and they're going to put it all together one of these nights. They have not yet, but Paul had a sensational game in game 2. I don't think Minnesota is going to be able to get a game from them.
Well, they're down 2-0, and it's just, these are desperation games when you come back home and you're down 2-0, because if you lose the game, you're pretty well nailing it in for game 4. Taking 5 points with a home underdog, you could have thought that way with Miami last night. Portland was down 2-0, but on the road they got blown out. San Antonio was at home down 2-0, they got blown out. So it looks like in this first round we have the haves and the have-nots, which is what the first round is all about anyway. And the have-nots just can't hold up. And that's the way it's playing out. I mean, the chalk has been destroying the number. And so favorite bettors have been doing incredibly well.
Well, that's been true except for 2 series. And that was the Pelicans, where the wrong team was favored to start with. And Utah came back strong in game 2. And that's kind of a form for the way these series usually go. And I think that series is very interesting. See what happens with Utah.
Utah and Oklahoma City is definitely a good series. I like Utah in the series, but I don't know. I don't feel comfortable laying 4.5 points with them Saturday night in a bounce-back game for Oak City. I just think that's going to be like, in the old zigzag theory used to work years ago. It's not anymore. But in this particular series, it actually might, because you need evenly matched teams to make that kind of a system work. And I think you might have evenly matched teams here. One's good on offense, the other's good on defense, and it seems to, there might be a play there on Oklahoma City plus 4.5. I see the other games on Saturday. I don't think Miami matches up anymore. Not that Embiid's back, and it just makes them too much harder. New Orleans is going to close it out. I don't know what to think about Houston, Minnesota, but I'm gonna stay off that game unless I get involved with the total. So I'm not gonna do anything about that. And I think Golden State, and they're a 6.5 point favorite on Sunday already. They're laying 6.5 on the road at San Antonio. That's a closeout game too. 6.5's a lot, but they're just a much better basketball team. The Spurs have had a tough season with all the stuff with Kawhi Leonard and now Popovich's wife passing away, and there's just too much emotional stress right there. I think those teams are going to close it out. I don't think it's going to be competitive anymore.
I'm anxious to see what I think Quinn Snyder has done a heck of a job with that Utah team. After they played so poorly in Game 1, he brought them back in Game 2, and I think he's a pretty good defensive coach. That's why that series. I wish I could have watched that game last night, but it was on the NBA channel, so I didn't get to see it. But I'm anxious to see Game 3.
Yeah, it's going to be a good series. That's one of the series that's actually competitive enough to really want to get involved with.
Meanwhile, except for the mistake I made with the Las Vegas team in Game 1 in their first series, I've been coming back real strong. With I played Washington in their last 2 games, and they won both of them. I think Washington might be a little bit underrated right now in their series against Columbus. Their coaches, the Columbus coach, is furious with his team as they got blown out last night at home, and Washington has evened up their series. Tortorella just blasted his team after the game and really didn't want to talk much about it. And he's really going to give it to his team. But I think Washington might come back and win that series. The Penguins are destroying the Flyers right now. They're in good shape with that series. A friend of mine who's a very good hockey handicapper thinks that it's going to be Boston and San Jose in the finals.
Well, that would be amazing. And when you talk about what the Vegas odds were to win the Stanley Cup in the beginning, and now what they are, it's absolutely incredible what's going on.
Well, Vegas is favored.
Yeah, I know they are. It's pretty amazing. Hank, we're running a little long, and the program doesn't allow us to go very long with this recording. But all of our players.
The Red Sox are never going to lose.
Well, they're playing incredibly well. They're coming off a pretty interesting series. They're going to be, they might be a play tonight, but I'm not real comfortable with them tonight because they're coming off that series, traveling again. But they are playing exceptional. The best team in baseball today at this moment. Hank, all of Hank's plays are at JimFeist.com, mine as well. And we'll talk again on Monday, Hank.
Okay, Jim. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.